going, guys? My name is Andrew. This is the Angle Fantasy Basketball Podcast. If you want to check out all of our content, all of the dynasty rankings that we do, you can see that on our website, anglefantasybasketball.wordpress.com. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at AngleBB. This podcast is available on Spotify, Apple Music, and YouTube. And we also do player videos and vlogs on our YouTube channel as well. So subscribe if you are new. Like this, thumb it up, hit the bell for notifications, and leave a comment below. Let us know how we're doing, and let us know about your interest in dynasty basketball too. So today, we are here to talk about some trades, and this is going to be specific trades. It's going to be covering the Angle Dynasty Basketball League, the greatest dynasty league in existence. So I have two members of that league with me today. First of all is one of my partners from Angle, Braxton. How are you today, buddy?
Good, man. As always, very excited. I'm very excited.
All right, very good. The second appearance of a very special guest, the lead dynasty mind at Sports Ethos, Mark C. How are you doing today, buddy?
I'm doing good, Andrew and Braxton. Excited to talk trades. There has been so much activity in this league. It's going to be interesting, even probably midseason, just going through the trade trails and seeing where these pieces, what pieces led to other pieces. I can't wait to see how it plays out.
Right. And I think to your point of mid-season, a lot of these trades have picks involved. And as of right now, obviously, all we really have is like power rankings, projections, things like that. But once we're going to start talking about trades mid-season, then we're going to be able to add in the factor of, this is just a late second-round pick, or this is going to be a good second-round pick. This is going to be a good first-round pick. This will be a late first-round pick. So we're going to have that added element in future episodes for us too. So to set some context here, the Angle Dynasty League is a 30-team dynasty league. Each roster is able to hold 12 active players with 3 minor spots. And the main caveat league setting that we have is we have real player salaries attached to each of these players. And everybody in the league, each team has to abide by the salary cap as well as the salary floor. So money being involved does, have some sway into the types of trades that we're going to be discussing today. But for the most part, we'll be discussing value, and then we'll, get into some discussion with the contracts attached to these players too. One thing that we're going to also note before we get started is each episode, which will also be featured on the thumbnail, we're going to cover the blockbuster of the episode. So this is rewarding the teams involved in the trade that made the biggest blockbuster that we're going to cover. And we have our first one today. So let's get into it. All right. So this is the blockbuster feature trade of today's episode. This is involving one very highly active team who you're going to see a lot of trades of in each of these trade episodes that we do, and that's the Brisbane Bullets. Shout out to NZ Bulls. The other involved team is the Sacramento Monarchs. Shout out to our old friend Nick Lovin as well too. So in this trade, the Brisbane Bullets sent out Bam Adebayo and Bobby Portis, in addition to a 2025 second-round pick. And keep in mind, this is a 30-team league, so this pick is going to be somewhere between 31 and 60. And the Brisbane Bullets is going to be receiving Giannis Antetokounmpo. So the Monarchs giving up Giannis, I believe that was his first overall pick in the Dynasty startup, in order to receive Bam, Bobby Portis, and a 2025 second. I know Nick Lovin is generally somebody who likes to roster Bobby Portis in salary leagues due to the very nice salary that he has. So let's get further into this trade. Mark, let's hear your opinion on this trade first.
So Giannis is one of those players that I'll classify as one of those build-around players that gives you a lot of stats and points, great field goal percentage, great boards, good assists, some pretty good stocks, and you can really build a nice punt free throw team, but you can really build a core identity around. And for someone of that caliber, I don't really think this is a strong enough return. It's not necessarily that Bam and Portis are bad in salary leagues. I mean, I like them. I think they put up good stats, but I would have either had liked to see, Bam be a slightly stronger player, individual player, or Portis be a much, I think, more higher upside player. We kind of know who Portis is. He's not going to really grow into much more. And yes, his salary is nice, but it's still kind of, what are you getting there? I just don't think it really matches up well to Giannis. And you can argue depth here. Bam plus Portis, maybe that equals Giannis. But the issue is on the Monarch side, looking through their team, I don't know if they can handle the loss in points that you lose from going down from Giannis to Bam. And Monarchs also have some other players at forward and center where the marginal gain of going from one of those other players to Bobby Portis, I felt was not really needed. So I don't really think the added depth is as huge a factor as I may normally think in other situations.
Who are some of those other players, Mark, that he has?
I do not recall off the top of my head. I did not.
Oh, gotcha. Just generally. Gotcha. Okay.
Generally, though, I remember looking through and I was like, there's some other adequate forwards and centers here that I thought, I mean, Portis' dual forward center eligibility always nice, especially in a daily set lineups league. But still, I don't know if there was enough value to value that flexibility above, what their other options were.
Yeah, he's got PJ Washington, Isaiah Stewart, who are both kind of that similar archetype as Bobby Portis. Jared Vanderbilt on the bench. Kuminga is another points and boards guy. So definitely agree with your points there about how I don't want to call it overkill, but definitely he has that archetype already. Not to discredit the impact of Bobby Portis, but usually you want to distribute the stats, the value with Bobby. How do I want to phrase this? Like the value that Bobby Portis holds, you kind of want to have that distributed into maybe guard stats or extra threes or something, as opposed to kind of just loading up on points and boards guys. So definitely agree with what you're saying there, Mark. Real quick before I jump into mine, did you have anything else you wanted to add?
No, I think that was it. I mean, on Brisbane's side with the depth, I mean, yeah, you traded away 2 players for one that could affect your depth. But looking through their roster, I thought they had a pretty solid top 6 plus Saric and Vince Williams as some other kind of, your 7th and 8th man. I think that's fine in salary dynasty. And so I think that's just enough where you're not losing the value end of this trade and you're getting a player as impactful as Giannis. I thought this was I thought getting Giannis was really nice here.
Yeah, and just for some added context, he's pairing Giannis with Zion and Josh Giddey, who are a couple of great guys to pair with him, I think.
That's
now, yeah, especially Zion. I mean, that's basically, one of the top guys you want to pair with him. Now, I will say, I'm not exactly the biggest fan of Bam. I think he's wildly overrated in dynasty circles. He never really took that step, or hasn't taken that step as a creator. Those assists that he had early in his career really haven't come back, even though Kyle Lowry is gone. There's just too many ball handlers on the team now. Or, even if they don't have enough ball handlers, they're not really asking Bam to do it. The blocks aren't high enough, and he doesn't shoot any threes. So, Bam a little bit for me is a little more name value than his actual value. And then Bobby Portis, like you said, Mark, he's got a pretty empty skill set. But I will, and we did just talk about the team context, right? But, definitely don't want to discredit the value of depth in a 30-team league. I know some people disagree with this, where they want to go top players and they think if they have 4 really good players and like 3 okay ones, that's good enough. But for me personally, I'm going 12 deep every time. And even though it accomplishes the goal of getting deeper, I think I would have liked to see a third piece along with Bam and Bobby Portis to be comfortable with that as a return on Giannis. Because like you said, Mark, Giannis is somebody you build around. He can do a little bit of anything, or a little bit of everything. And, with how punts are less relevant in 30-team leagues too, I don't even think you need to punt free throw percentage with Giannis in a 30-team league. So I definitely prefer, I think, Giannis overall here.
Yeah, and one thing that was mentioned too is the points hit that you get from giving away Giannis in order to take on Bam and Bobby. But the other part of that too is defense. Both Bam and Bobby don't provide much defense at all. So not only are you losing the major points that Giannis can provide, you are losing his defense as well too. In addition to that, this package was put together as a salary match, but the way some of these contracts are going nowadays, at least for this upcoming season, Giannis being at about 48 million doesn't feel too bad for the amount of production that he's able to give. And the salary cap is obviously going to raise again next year, so it shouldn't be too big of a deal that his salary is going to go up, I think, around like a little less than 10 million, maybe like 7 or 8 million or so. But for this year, I actually don't mind Giannis too much in salary leagues due to where, some of these other contracts are starting to head that we're seeing nowadays, because he signed his deal a little bit earlier than some of these other guys. And so with that in mind, it's not as high as the number of some of these other guys, especially the closer that they got to signing with this new TV deal happening here. So I would also probably lean towards the bullet side because like Mark said, Giannis is a build specific person, and Brisbane is absolutely pulling that off with a very, very niche, unique build that is specifically constructed around Giannis now. Okay, so that's going to bring us to our second trade. So this one involves you, Braxton. Your team is known as the New Zealand Breakers, and you traded it with the New York Knicks. So the New York Knicks is a co-led team by two of our friends over at Point Dynasty Basketball. So in this trade, Braxton, you sent your original rookie draft pick, Yves Missi, in addition to a 2026 first-round pick, and you received your Charlotte boy, Tidjane Salaun, and you also got 2 second-round picks out of that. You got a 2025 second-round pick and a 2026 second-round pick. So tell me about how you feel about landing your Hornets guy, Salaun. And yeah, I know you've been fighting to get Salaun in some other leagues too. So tell me about your experience of like what it's been like, what you've been seeing out there in regards to, trying to land Salaun, and how you're feeling about how this deal went down for you.
Yeah, what I think is really interesting about it is on draft night, I think this could have been classified as an overpay. Salaun was going, after 10, kind of late lottery in a lot of leagues. And Missi went at 18. I believe I picked him at 17 or 18 in this league. And, paying a first round pick to move up, 5 or 6 spots is, probably not the best use of resources. But with that being said, I probably would have picked Salaun as early as 7 or 8. Tidjane Salaun is somebody I'm really excited about. The Hornets have, and some people, regardless of people doubting this, the Hornets have everything the Hornets have done at this point leads me to believe that they are planning on him to contribute a little bit this season. I know some people think they're just going to stick him in the G League and he'll kind of toil away at there the entire year, but I think he's going to play some backup 5 at some point, especially with some of the trade rumors that are going around about Nick Richards at the time of recording. I'm not saying Salaun is going to be a core piece of this rotation or anything in the first season, but I think he's going to earn himself some spot minutes early on, and if he shows well enough, maybe he creeps into a bench role later in the year. Now, I guess I also just want to talk about how I think Salaun is being valued in dynasty circles. To me, it's kind of similar to how Reaves is being valued, where people are kind of just throwing the draft capital out of the window for some reason. Reaves was going as late as 14 in some leagues. To me, that's ridiculous. Salaun kind of the same thing. I mean, this is the 6th overall pick. And I know that we've seen players bust out of 1 and obviously out of 6, but taking players that are going 15, 16, 17, and just completely disregarding that draft capital, taking them ahead of Salaun and Reaves for that matter, to me is a bit irresponsible. And I think Missi is just as much of a project as Salaun at this point, with Salaun having the more upside, with Missi just kind of having those, normal big man stats, the Clint Capella type archetype, where Salaun's upside, who knows? So I'm very happy with it. The second round picks can be used as extra trade ammo in the future. Who needs first round picks? I'll get more anyway in the future. So
that's a good point. You probably will end up getting another first round pick eventually. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of, I think you and I are on the same wavelength generally with second round picks, as we prefer to use those as trade pieces. And then the only time I try to acquire second round picks is I'll try to buy my way into the very end of the second round during the draft, where guys don't care about picks in the 50s, and try to get some dart throws going there. But for the most part, yeah, I think the best thing to use them for is as a nice little sweetener to get a trade pushed across the table. Like, for example, with the last trade we talked about, the Bam and Bobby for Giannis, I think potentially in that deal, I know Braxton said he wished there was a third piece. I mean, that third piece was a second round pick, but it's a good deal sweetener at the time, but I think it probably would have been better if it was an actual player. But I think on your end, even though you're sacrificing the capital of a first round pick, I do really like that you got 2 picks in addition to what probably should be the better player in this deal. I mean, both of these guys are pretty raw. But I think ceiling wise, Salaun has one of the higher ceilings in general out of this draft class. It's really all about where he's at right now and where his floor is. Like, it's possible that he could easily be highest ceiling, lowest floor in regards to, let's say, the top 8 from this 2024 draft class. So I do like Salaun a lot, and I do like this deal for you, but I do like Missi as well too. I don't hate it for the next side because just like there is some questions of Salaun likely getting a good rotation spot potentially, there is also that same potential scenario for Missi in New Orleans too. It's pretty much just Daniel Tice there at the moment, and of course small ball center Zion. So I think Missi can actually get some good run in New Orleans this year too. What do you feel about this one, Mark?
I'm actually a little bit on the opposite here.
Okay.
I actually have Missi higher than Salaun in non-salary and salary too. So getting Missi in a first is just kind of a clear win on that end. And part of the reason I have Missi above Salaun in salary is you want that production on the rookie contract because that's where the real value is. And I agree with both your points that Missi and Salaun, they're both raw, could probably use a little more seasoning. But and that Salaun has the higher upside. I could see Salaun being more maybe top 50, top 75 if those defensive rates come around a little more as we think they can. Where Missi, he's probably your prototypical center, your blocks, your boards, your field goal percentage. Not as much maybe high-end juice there. But is Salaun going to provide that in his first 4 seasons? Or is it going to take till maybe year 5 or year 6 when he's more developed and can actually provide that value when he's now making more on his second contract? And at that point, maybe a lot of that value, that excess value, is lost. So I think there's a more immediate spot where Missi can contribute with that Pelicans center rotation kind of being non-existent besides the corpse of Daniel Tice. Apologies to Daniel Tice. I respected your game, but you are getting a little
That's crazy. He's going to watch this. It's crazy. He's
Daniel Tice is obviously going to watch this.
That'd be pretty cool, honestly. Maybe I'll take him back. You'll be great in New Orleans, Daniel Tice. But I think there's a chance that Missi could play just, a 15-minute role early on and then develop a little further. Whereas Salaun, I could see that being maybe year 2, year 3, where he starts seeing a role. And then, maybe year 4, Salaun starts outproducing Missi, but then that's 3 years of kind of lost value there.
And I'll add a little bit of context here on that note. My team is 12 players deep, like I mentioned I like to do. And, I'm in a position to where I don't necessarily need that production from Missi year 1. It could be more valuable to have, let Salaun, the higher upside guy, kind of sit in that minor slot for a year. The guy who I deem more valuable, right, as opposed to taking that immediate production from Missi. And also 2026 is not a real year, right? So that first round pick is not real. Okay. Especially, and you guys know me, I'm not thinking 5-6 years down the line. So I'm definitely planning on Salaun contributing earlier than 5 years from now. But yeah, I don't disagree with a lot of a lot of what you said, Mark, is totally fair.
And that is a fair point, that if you have that depth, then yeah, I'd rather lean to just the player that you judge having more upside, because if you don't need him, okay, well then take the higher upside guy and hope he pans out.
Both good points, D. I mean, it seems like, based on all 3 of our opinions, that Salaun, and I'd imagine this is probably reflected in the majority of the dynasty community too, that Salaun has a pretty wide range of outcomes and perceived value with him. Whereas I think some people will be more trusting of the fact that, okay, Missi is built exactly the way you want for a prototypical NBA center, and it's most likely going to be a successful rim running center. So I think I could definitely 100% understand people's siding with Missi because they believe him to be the safer option. That for sure makes sense to me. All right. So we're going to go to our next trade here, and this is involving two young ones. So this is involving one member of the rookie class from this last draft class, as well as a member of the 2023 rookie class. So our friend Worth Blackwater Bossing sent Devon Carter over to Sport Lisboa e Benfica, who's our friend Bruno. He sent Gradey Dick in exchange for Devon Carter. So I found this one to be very interesting because at least per Basketball Monster projections, I know we're in September, so these projections can wildly be different. But as of right now, both Blackwater Bossing and Benfica are pretty high up there in what they're predicted to do for this season. So for somebody like Blackwater Bossing, giving away Devon Carter, who's going to be injured for the first portion of this season, and receiving somebody who could potentially start right away for him in this season, I think is something that's going to really like rescue a lot of stats for him for the beginning of the year, as well as a lot of the year too. So we got the recent news that Bruce Brown had, for whatever reason, decided to take his sweet time with getting knee surgery this offseason. So he's not going to be ready for the start of the regular season for the Raptors. So a lot of us have a high expectation that Gradey Dick might get his starting job to begin the year. And Dick showed some promising things at the end of last year too. So I like this move by Bossing to, instead of waiting for Carter to come back, potentially stashing him in the minor spot, he added somebody who's going to contribute for him right away this season in Gradey Dick, whether it be as a starter or in a prominent bench role. And also, too, with Dick being drafted outside the top 10 last year, his salary is at a pretty manageable level. I know Carter's should probably be pretty similar here, so I think it's a bit of a wash in that regard. And even in regards to their dynasty value, it's a pretty much a wash, too. At least I know in regards to our rankings, they're pretty close together here. But from the most part, I'm speaking towards at least the current injury status from where Carter is at to where at this moment in time, as far as we know, Gradey Dick is healthy. But I will say down the road, we might see Devon Carter become a more impactful 9-category player. So Braxton, what do you think about that?
I think it's a pretty dead even trade in terms of overall value. You're swapping that, like you said, that higher upside guy or maybe potentially better fantasy skill set guy in Devon Carter. You're swapping that, 5 or 6 months of recovery time for the more immediate production, albeit likely lesser. Obviously, Devon Carter hasn't played an NBA game yet, but something I think we also need to factor in, and that goes for all of these trades, is the team context, right? I mean, Blackwater Bossing is the team that has Wemby. He's building around Wembanyama. And undoubtedly, Devon Carter is a better fit next to Wembanyama on a 30 team, in a 30-team league. You want to surround him, in my opinion, with guard stats, as well as big man stats, and the rest will come in as far as threes and stuff go. And I don't like the fit. Obviously, this is a peripheral move. It's not like a big shakeup on the squad or anything, but I don't necessarily think Gradey Dick is a great complementary piece to Wembanyama. I think Devon Carter is a much better guard to have with those out of position rebounds, potentially like he's supposed to, as well as the steals and a splash of assists. But in overall value, I think it is pretty even. And I do get why both teams made the move.
So with our dynasty ranks, like I mentioned, I believe Carter and Dick are pretty close to each other. But Mark, you've got your own dynasty ranks. So is that kind of reflected the same, or do you have one, maybe a considerable amount over the other in this scenario?
I believe I have to double check, but I believe they're pretty close. I know some are down on Gradey Dick because they kind of just see maybe a threes player there without too much. I personally was a huge fan of Dick when he came into the draft. And I think I had him 6 on not on my fantasy rookie board, but on my just NBA big board, because I saw got the threes and the movement shooting, but also a player who's kind of willing to get in there, can kind of knows his way for some boards and some steals. Not at any great volumes, but enough to help round out that fantasy set. And Braxton, when you were mentioning with the Wemby build, I thought you were going a different direction. I actually kind of like him getting Dick in this trade and trying to go in on this year with the cheap Wemby starting this year, because as we mentioned, Devon Carter's probably going to be out a majority of the season with an injury. And so I don't know how he's going to come back, if he's going to play too much, how he's going to fit in the rotation when he does actually get healthy. So considering the values, I think we all agree are pretty even with these two players. I'd rather just go for the player than that I know can help me win now, which Gradey Dick, I think, can do to not maybe a great degree, but at least to some degree.
Yeah, like I don't think we looked enough into their actual NBA team context. The Raptors are completely rebuilding. They have, every reason in the world to give Gradey Dick as much run as he can handle this year. I know their coach last year wanted him to put on muscles, so that's a lot of reason why he spent a lot of time with the 905 last year. But towards the end of the year, when he was starting to physically mature a bit more and the game was starting to slow down for him, he was playing. And the elephant in the room in regards to a potential rotation spot for Devon Carter when he is healthy, I would say is Keon Ellis. Because in my mind, I would say like the idea of what they're supposed to do and what they're supposed to provide as an energy person, a disruptor, someone who's going to grab rebounds, make steals, cover the best player on the other team. I see them both kind of in that same type of mold here. So it's very curious what that role is going to be for Devon Carter once he does return and if there's something that's available to him in the Kings rotation. So that takes us to our next trade. And this trade makes me happy because this is going to be a discussion of value that's happening right here, right now, as opposed to perceived future value. So the two teams involved here, we have the Mexico City Capitanes. He sent away Trey Murphy, and from the Beijing Ducks, he acquired Derrick White. So Murphy is heading to the Ducks. White is heading to Mexico City. So this one is this one's going to create a good amount of discussion because last year in 9 category leagues, Derrick White was comfortably in the top 40. However, in regards to dynasty perspective, Trey Murphy is somebody that everybody loves in regards to, wait for this blow up is going to happen eventually because New Orleans is a lot better when Trey Murphy gets more minutes. However, there is some roadblocks in his way. I mean, Brandon Ingram is still there. That's not gonna go away anytime soon. He is still there, and so that is a potential roadblock for Trey Murphy, who himself he did end up within the top 80 9 category wise last year too. So obviously, the younger player in this scenario is Trey Murphy, and a lot of people are probably going to gravitate towards Trey simply for that. However, if we, like I said, this is 9 category basketball, and a very, very unique 9 category player can be found in Derrick White. The out of position rebounding, blocks that he provides, he fits very, very well in a big man oriented team. Like, let's say you're a team that has Wemby, let's say you're a team that has Miles Turner, something like that. Derrick White's a guard that you absolutely want to have. In addition to pristine, crystal clean percentages, efficiency, he is a 9 category darling, whereas Murphy, in my opinion, is more of a specialist. So, Mark, I know I talked to you a little bit about Trey Murphy. I was discussing a potential trade to acquire him in this league in the offseason. I didn't end up doing it, but we did have this discussion on Trey. So how do you feel about this move here?
I pretty much agree if you're some of your both players. And considering it's a salary league, we have to add on this additional context as well, where Derrick White's making a pretty, I believe it's this year, he's still making that manageable about 17 to 19 million. Then he already signed that extension for about, I think, 120, so he'll make a shade under 30 million next season. And Trey Murphy this season's making about, I believe it's 5 or 6 million, and he hasn't signed any deal yet. But I'm expecting him to probably sign around that 30 million per year number. So I think next season you're going to see White and Murphy probably make around the same amount. And considering, Murphy is probably a little bit more that specialist, he does help in other areas, but I would say he's more still that kind of threes without damaging efficiency type. And White's still, I don't even want to say jack of all trades, pretty good in all trades player. I would rather just have White, I think, here. I think he's just the better player, and factoring in future salary increases, I don't think that justifies the lower salary of Murphy this year.
Brax, how do you feel about this one? I mean, do you think Trey Murphy is ever going to reach the 9 category production that Derrick White's currently producing?
No, he's not. You said everybody likes Trey Murphy. I am not really a Trey Murphy fan. He's similar to Bam. I think he's wildly overvalued in dynasty circles. We saw him disappear at times last year, and that was before DeJounte Murray got added to the mix, right? He's mainly points and threes, which is not, which he is fine as a peripheral asset, right? But he's valued by some people in the top 65, the top 75 in terms of dynasty ranks, and that's just too high for me. Even if his 9-cat rank gets there, it's gonna be one of those inflated 9-cat ranks that doesn't accurately depict his contribution to your team. So I think Derrick White this year, the next year, the year after, 3 years from now is going to be a better asset than Trey Murphy in terms of impact on your team. And Andrew, I like to talk about impact versus 9-cat ranking. Derrick White is somebody that can lead you to a championship. Trey Murphy is somebody that maybe can win you threes in a certain week. So
yeah, I mean, it's gonna be a lot to ask for people to not have their youth blinders on, because everybody's gonna say Murphy's the younger asset. We're expecting a big explosion from him when Brandon Ingram leaves, but I don't know if I see him getting to be as useful of a 9-category player as Derrick White is, even with Brandon Ingram gone. And to your point too, the lower turnover amount, because he's not as much of a ball handler, he's more of a shooter for Trey Murphy, is another reason why his stat set is inflated. Whereas Derrick White, he has a higher usage rate and is able to keep everything crystal clean too. Lower than 2 turnovers per game, shooting 90% from the free throw line, 46% from the field, which, that's not going to be very complimentary to a team that has field goal percentage in their build, but it's obviously not going to drain it either. It's not like he's shooting 42% on high volume. So Derrick White, is much more of a 9-category darling. And, to Mark's point too, it's going to get to a point where both of them are going to be making a pretty similar amount money-wise too. So with Derrick White, he's really not that old yet either. He's still in his prime right now too. And we still need to see that logjam of Brandon Ingram leaving the New Orleans Pelicans. So for somebody who's producing right here, right now, there's no roadblock ahead of him. I like Derrick White in this scenario too. Okay. So this is going to take us to our final trade that we're covering here. Now, this is involving you both. So, Braxton, your side, the New Zealand Breakers, in addition to, this is going to be our first trade we're covering for you, Mark, and your team is known as the Houston Comets. So, Braxton, you sent Kyle Kuzma, after you acquired him from me, actually, and Ivica Zubac, in addition to your 2025 first-round pick. I don't know if it was yours or somebody else's, but it was a first-round pick. And you received Austin Reaves, Draymond Green, a 2025 second-round pick, and a 2026 second-round pick. So this is another scenario of you sending a player or players and a first-round pick in receiving either 1 or 2 players and 2 second-round picks. So, Mark, you originally drafted Reaves and Draymond. You are now rostering Zubac and Kuzma. So I'm going to leave it up to you two. Who wants to go first in regards to talking about this trade between you two?
yeah, I think the NZ Breakers won this trade. Okay, I'm just going to go out and say it.
Well, that's funny. I was going to say the Houston Comets clearly won this trade. So
there's a clear bias on your side, though. I'm trying to be objective and say the NZ
fight
Breakers
each other.
won.
Yes.
So I'll hop in first. If I haven't made it clear by now, I am obsessed with big men who provide out of position assists. Draymond Green obviously fits that mold. I like players who can contribute all around. Reaves fits that mold. Obviously, Kuzma does as well to an extent, right? But Reaves has that guard eligibility, which is something I needed at the time, and also is on a really nice contract. Kuzma's on a pretty nice contract as well. It's depreciating. And Zubac is all the contracts here are pretty solid. Draymond obviously a little bit overpaid maybe in a salary setting, but those out of position assists are worth it to me to pay that contract. And I'm actually paired him next to Isaiah Hartenstein as well as big man rotation. I think it's a pretty elite assists, out of position assists, big man squad, I guess you should say, especially when you're lacking assists or trying to make up for a lack of assists in other positions. Zubac obviously pretty straightforward big man game, not a ton of upside there. Draymond also, I guess, relatively low upside, but I'm just obsessed with peripheral stats. If I could, I sometimes and this is kind of going off on a tangent, but I'll sometimes end up punting points by accident in redraft leagues just because I love seeing them rack up stats in other categories. So Draymond is definitely somebody that I'm gonna have fun watching. Same with Reaves, and the first round picks aren't real. I'll get more eventually, and they're no good besides the trade. So,
Mark, your rebuttal?
It's interesting because whenever you make a trade, I like to do like the little handshake emoji. All right, good trading with you, but I'm always curious, like, what is the actual manager's like real thoughts? So I'm actually hearing your thoughts, for the first time here, Braxton, and it's interesting too because I don't really disagree with anything you said. I agree, like Reaves and Draymond Green both give those peripheral stats, which I love. That's why I got them, and on pretty manageable salaries. But with my team, I already had a lot of assists I ended up drafting. I had Dejounte Murray. I have D'Angelo Russell. My first pick was Domantas Sabonis. I have Peyton Pritchard now off the bench. So I already have a pretty good volume of assists. Kyle Kuzma himself actually gets a little over 4. I also have Max Strus, who actually got 4 last year. Even if that dips to 3, that's pretty good in 30 team. So after the draft that we had, the startup draft, I was actually trying to trade away some assists for rebounds. And I felt like I got that by getting Kyle Kuzma and Ivica Zubac. And Zubac's salary, he was in the last year of his contract. And I was anticipated him signing this extension he got, the 4 for 78. So that's a very manageable salary for a center of his ilk and ability in my eyes. But the real turning point for me was at 25 first, which is to Colossus Rhodes first. And I think that has some pretty decent upside scenarios in a stacked 25 draft class, whether that's trading that pick back to them or just holding it and having that lottery pick potentially that I see it as currently. And so for me, I think I got the stats that I wanted, and that kind of trading those assists for boards mainly, while also picking up the additional 25 first that can just be used in different moves later, or I can just hold it if it looks really nice and juicy.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough to pick a side here.
pick a
One
side,
thing I will
Andrew.
say,
Come on, don't you can't just be in the middle. You gotta
okay.
take a
So
stance.
let's get into this here. So one thing I will note is that so far in regards to preseason power rankings, Mark's suspicion on the first round pick that he's receiving is so far looking correct. Obviously things can change, but so far his intuition on that is proving to be correct. So that's one thing. I think I disagree with you, Brax, about Zubac being like not super high upside, because I'm curious.
That's crazy.
What
Disagreeing
happens? Well, I'm curious to see what happens with a inflated role for James Harden and how that impacts Zubac. So,
well, like, what if Kawhi Leonard were to miss some time? Oh, wait, there was a report earlier today that
Zubac is going to play. Zubac is going to handle the ball, and he'll play the 3. And
will not handle the ball, but we know that Zubac can shoulder a pretty okay scoring load, and I think he's going to have to be involved. Like the Clippers are going to have a lot of nights where it's Norm Powell, James Harden, and Zubac. That's going to happen a lot. So obviously my boy Reaves, I'm a Lakers fan. I love him. I think we're probably going to see more of the same from Draymond, even though Klay Thompson is leaving. That's kind of just what Draymond's role has always been. Hasn't really changed too much. Obviously you got 2 second-round picks here too. And then Kuzma. So, when I traded away Kuzma in this league, I initially drafted him in the startup draft. I didn't do so with like a concern about Kuzma. I don't really have like a worry like, oh, he's going to get traded to a team where he gets less usage or something like that. I don't really have that concern. The reason why I drafted him is because he's got a very friendly contract that lasts for a few years, actually, in regards to a salary league. So if I'm going to have to pick here, and what's funny is that, both sides of this trade kind of fits what each person typically seems to go for with those types of rosters. Like Braxton, your roster continues to get deeper. It represents what you do, which is, a full 12-man roster. Where Mark, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think your Houston roster is a little bit more top heavy as of right now. Is that correct?
Yeah, I usually like to basically do like the starters plus 2, where we have 6 starters. I like having kind of a top 8 I feel comfortable playing, and whatever the league size, and then after that kind of fill it up with some upside shots.
Right. So, in this scenario, so long as everybody remains healthy for you, I probably am going to side with your side for right now, just purely for upside, not only for the players, but for the first round pick involved too. It's not that far apart, Braxton. So
I'm just no. You know what?
Don't
I'm
get
just gonna
too
say it.
upset.
No, I'm just gonna say it. Don't ask me for one of those second round picks. You're not getting one. Okay.
Okay.
Those are
Well, those second round picks are going to be pick 60, so you can just take the L, Braxton.
Fine, fair enough. I don't get any second round picks from Braxton then, but I think there could be some good nights from Zubac. Kuzma's going to do pretty much the same thing that he did last year, but I'm obviously not going to discount Reaves. That's my boy. But yeah, I think from that, in addition to the first round pick in this scenario, because for example, Braxton, in the first round pick you sent for Salaun, that was your own 2026 pick, correct?
Believe so. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. That's definitely not as much of a toll to pay as opposed to a first round pick from somebody else whose team at the moment does not look as good as yours does. So
thank you.
I like, I talked about this with Mark too. I talked about how I thought that first could end up being pretty nice, but of course things can change. Our friend Colby, the owner of Colossus Roads, could easily make some trades who gets better to make himself better. So, and of course too, these, preseason power rankings here is not 100% accurate. There's always things that change. I've seen, situations before where someone was projected to be middle of the pack and then ended up being first place. This type of stuff happens just because, every season there's always going to be some, one or two players who kind of comes out of nowhere to be productive. So, upside wise, I'll probably swing with the Mark side for now for the Houston Comets, but it is pretty even for me.
Now, I'll say it. Maybe that's where, kind of the discrepancy is, because I think you guys are valuing this pick a lot higher than I am. The team, and just for some context, the team that this pick belongs to has, Donovan Mitchell, Cameron Thomas, who's about to break out, potentially rebounding Zach LaVine, who I think he got for pennies on the dollar, Jacopoto, Clint Capella. So, this is not Porzingis as well, who is going to miss time, right? But this is not some team with a bunch of scrubs on it,
right?
And I think it's pretty
I'll
easily
add to that
a
context
team.
That he's not projected to be bad. It's more so like in the middle. So like I just think Mark's initial suspicion of this could end up being a good pick, especially if he gets like an injury or two, is right. But yeah, as of right now, that team's not bad. He's more so like, in the middle, potentially will make one of those final playoff spots or get very close to it. As of right now, things could change.
I'll add one more thing. Picks are most valuable in trades, and getting trades like this done, and being able to shape, a team the way that I want to. That's why, this is two trades now in the same out of this list where I've attached a first to somebody to get a player or players who I think are better. So while yes, maybe losing some value on that pick, I'm trading it for something I deem to be more immediate production.
I mean, to your credit, the highest, like dynasty wise, the highest ranked player in this deal is Austin Reaves. To your credit, so you did get the highest ranked player here.
That's something I was definitely concerned about, because I was like, yeah, Reaves is clearly the best dynasty asset here. I don't normally like giving up the best trade. And yeah, I mean, this first Crispy Bidling could be a rookie that doesn't pan out. But as you said, first round picks are kind of not meant to be traded, but they have a lot of value when traded. So, I mean, I could definitely just wing this at the trade deadline or sometime before that and use this to upgrade my roster too. So, that's definitely something I'll be exploring most likely as I'm trying to push in to win.
I feel like I could see more trades happen between you two, because I remember at the end of the startup draft, Braxton was pretty obsessed with your team because you kind of went for a pretty similar build from what he typically likes to do too, especially those out of position assists with big men, and just the overall type of archetype of players that you put in there. You guys had a pretty similar mindset in that regard. So I think, since your builds kind of complement each other, I think we might see some more swaps from you two in the future.
I'll trade you a second for a second if you want.
Yeah, I mean, as long as you don't route it to Andrew eventually, I think it should be fine.
I've definitely talked my way into not receiving any of those juicy second round picks.
I have like 20 of them, Andrew. You're not getting any. I've cornered the market on seconds. Okay.
You actually have. I remember seeing that the other day. I was like, damn, this dude's got like 12 seconds right now.
Yeah, I'm stockpiling to avoid so that you don't get any.
I remember when I was trying to get a center too. I was saying I'll send picks or whatever, and you're just like, I will outbid you, and I'm just like, this asshole. His roster's completely full. He's just trying to just surround anyways.
I don't think anyone needs 8 second-round picks. What are you doing? What are you building?
I mean, later, I can totally see it happen in mid-season. Someone's just kind of giving up and wants to reset. There'll be somebody out there who wants multiple picks attached to something.
Mark, I don't think I actually won the trade by a mile, despite what I said, just so you know.
Oh, no. I completely got that. I think it's pretty close, and it's going to hinge on that first round pick, honestly.
Okay. Yeah, I don't give a shit about picks, so that's
you will realize that in the future that Braxton normally doesn't care. Like if there's a rookie that Braxton likes in the draft a lot, you'll see him
I
jump
trade
in
back
and get him.
That's how I got Salaun anyway. You know,
right.
It's how it works, man.
Exactly.
Yeah, I did that. I mean, I did that with Collier. I traded, I think, my first round pick next year for Collier because I was like, this guy's
can always get back in. Can always get back in.
Very, very true. All right, so that's going to do it for us here today. We got 5 trades covered, but there's been so much trade activity in this league that we're going to need to do another trade video pretty soon here. So we're going to have Mitchell on, and we're going to have another member of the league on whose name is Kase, the owner of the Las Vegas Aces, will be on that episode too. So be on the lookout for that one soon because we'll have another a fresh 5 trades to discuss then. But once again, shout out to the Brisbane Bullets and the Sacramento Monarchs, Nick Lovin and NZ Bulls for being the 2 owners to pull off our featured blockbuster trade. So, Mark, thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule, especially running the Punt Intended podcast, to join us here today. So tell the people where they can find you, your work, as well as your podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. Always a good pod and conversation. You can find me at Twitter at MacAttack145, and then my writings and rankings over at sportsethos.com. And then if you just search in whatever podcast provider, Punt Intended Pod should pop up. That releases weekly. We'll be going into kind of a division by division team rotation previews, maybe where there can be value for rookies or young players to emerge. Andrew and Braxton, I think we'll talk offline, maybe having y'all guest on one of those division previews and talk about that. But yeah, then putting out some off-season pieces and writings and some articles. So be sure to check that out too.
Yeah, keep a close eye on the Punt Intended pod because you'll obviously get great content out of Mark, and you might see us on there too. Mitch and I have already been on there one time. There was a great episode discussing things ranging from my experience at NBA Summer League, different dynasty talk, a lot of talk about that young Houston Rockets core. So great conversations and, likely some ones to happen in the future too on both of our podcasting platforms. So thank you again, everybody, for joining today. Make sure to leave a comment down below. What do you feel about some of these trades? Who do you think the winner of some of these trades were? And most specifically, let's make this interesting. Who do you think won between this trade, between Mark and Braxton here, the last trade that we talked about today? So leave a comment down below to let us know. And thank you for tuning in, and we'll catch you guys next time.
Captain, always gotta look for him. Beat so tight, I almost put a hook on it. Verse so fire, almost put a cook on it. Had this shit jumping, looking like I put a foot on it. Got 100 on the dash when I book Sonic. Only game that I play, gotta work on it. Gotta flow so hard that it looks solid. Y'all be cynical.